Hey, welcome to another video. I would suspect that most photographers, hobbyists, pros, doesn't matter. Not all, but most would probably say that they have a favorite lens. Not necessarily the one that they use the most, but the one that if someone said you could only have one lens to use forever, what would it be? For me, it would probably be a 50mm lens. And more specifically, probably my Voigtlander F2 Apo lens. It's probably the best lens I own at this point as well. And when I say best lens, in terms of rendering, the images I can get off it, and not only that, the type of images you can take. A lot of people might assume a 50mm lens, it's a good just walk around lens, it's a portrait lens. And a lot of people would see it maybe mostly as that. Never fails. It's been quiet all morning. For people who watch my channel, you know I live right behind this little airport here. Hadn't been any planes taking off all morning. I come out here to do this video, and of course now they're all flying all over the place, doing their training and everything else. Never fails. Anyway, back to the Voigtlander 50 F2 Apo lens. What I decided to do, I think I'm going to do a series of videos. I don't know that I'm going to take the exact same route as far as my walk. I may do one downtown, I may do one around the lake. Well, I've already done the one around the lake with the 50mm, to be honest with you. And I'm going to share those images with you in just a second. But what I wanted to try and prove is that you can take pretty much any lens and get images out of it. Maybe not necessarily always bangers, but you can get some nice images no matter where you live. Sometimes I envy the people that live over in the UK because they can travel to the Lake District and up into Scotland and catch a ferry even over to Ireland, not too far from Iceland. If they want to, they can hop over and go to Paris rather quickly. So I sort of envy their location. Down here in South Florida, yeah, I can go shoot the beach, but how many sunrises and moonrises can you do? Even though I enjoy doing them. And most people just live in average run-of-the-mill neighborhoods. They don't necessarily live in big cities. Maybe they live in the Midwest or wherever they live around the world. They just live in little areas and they feel as though they can't get good images. Well, I'm going to try and prove to you that you can with several different lenses. So if you want to follow me along, please hit the subscribe button. Let's get into the images that I took. Now, I only walked. One of the reasons why I was doing it was A, to get some exercise, B, the Voigtlander is a manual focus lens, and I have to practice shooting with a manual focus lens all the time, otherwise you lose the skill. Also, it's good to just go out and practice with your camera, right? Practice, practice, practice. You want to get better? You don't need new gear, just go out and practice. And also down here, one last reason why I do it is, if you don't take your lenses out every once in a while and put some light through them, you could get mold in them. So I tend to use each one of my lenses at least every couple of months to get some light through them, and it eliminates mold. Now, I do have a cabinet where they're in a dehumidifier, but still, it's good to run light through your lenses every once in a while. So there's a tip for you. So let me get to the computer. I'll show you some of the images I took with the 50mm. All I did was walk around for about an hour, just in my regular neighborhood. And again, none of them are bangers, but I did get a couple of nice images, I think. And I try to prove to you that you can do it. And if it's just you, your camera, and a 50mm, you can be pretty creative with a 50mm lens and just walking around your neighborhood. All right, let's get to it. See you in a second. Okay, I'm back at the computer. The first image I want to show you is just a couple of people walking around the lake. Obviously, I converted it to black and white. It's almost like an environmental portrait. but it's just one of the things you can do with a 50 millimeter. I'm sure you've heard many times they say a 50 millimeter gives you the view of what you would naturally see or close to it. And one of the advantages of that is your lines are straight. They're not crooked the way you might get sometimes with a 20 or 24, certainly a 16 millimeter lens. So you get the view that you would normally see. Is a 50 millimeter lens ideal for wildlife? No, but you can do it. And being a manual focus lens, this is something you really have to practice at. Now some people would say, well, you just zone focus it, meaning you know where things are going to be in focus, and when a bird or something flies into that area, you take the picture and it should be in focus. Obviously, you have to have a fast enough shutter speed. So again, it goes back to knowing, if you're shooting in manual, how to program in to get a fast enough shutter speed. Meaning, do you have to adjust your ISO? Do you have to adjust your aperture? So that is the shutter the priority of what you're trying to do? In a case like that, it probably is. With this image, I was trying to get a little movement in those ferns and willows, whatever they are. And I also wanted to bring out a little bit of color and also try to be a little creative, which with a 50 millimeter, it's pretty easy to be creative. Again, you may not like the image, but the 50 millimeter is certainly a focal length that you can try to do different things with and be a little creative, and that's what I was trying to do with this particular image. This next image was pretty much the same thing. I was just trying to be creative. I saw the little S curve in the walkway, and I thought I would try to take advantage of that situation. So again, you can do kind of an artistic look with a 50 millimeter pretty easily. You can certainly shoot landscapes with a 50 millimeter lens, and maybe even, again, a little bit of wildlife with that heron sitting there. But a lot of people use just a 50 millimeter lens to shoot their landscapes. I typically use either a 20, 28, or a 50 to do most of my landscapes, which is why really I carry around the Nikon 24-120 because it has that range. But I find that most of the time, for me personally now, when I shoot landscapes, they're somewhere between about 28 millimeter and 58 millimeter. Somewhere in there. Usually they settle around the 40 to 50 millimeter range. Now that's just me. One of the things that I like to do is do panoramas. I'll shoot a 50 millimeter and do maybe a 5 or 6 shot panorama with a 50 millimeter. It's pretty good for that. This next image, I guess what I was going for was the sense of isolation. The man sitting there at the bench. I got a couple of pictures from behind him, but I like this one probably better than the ones coming from behind. But again, it's not necessarily an environmental portrait. You could say it's a portrait, you could say it's landscape, but it's just an image of a guy sitting in isolation. One more where I was trying to play with the light and the shadows. Again, it's not a great image, but just trying to be creative. And I want to emphasize that I didn't necessarily go out on this walk with the intention of trying to find an image that was going to be put in National Geographic. It was more, again, just to use the lens. You have to practice with all these lenses, figure out what you can and can't do, even though you've used them for a long time. It's still good to practice with them, especially a manual focus lens like this Voigtlander. And this isn't a review of the Voigtlander lens, even though I've spoken very highly of the lens many times. It probably is still my favorite lens. I fully admit that. But you still have to practice with it. You still have to take it out, take images with it, practice that manual focus, try to see the light, try to see shapes, shadows, all those kinds of things, and just practice. One last image Yeah, I know. I just got the Karnak applause in the background. Not too many of you will get that joke. The old Johnny Carson Karnak character. Anyway, one last image. Just a picture of the moon. Was coming up on a full moon cycle in another night or two. So the moon had risen a couple hours before sunset. And there it was. A pretty simple image. But again, just practicing the dynamic range that you need to not completely blow out that moon, yet still get some sort of shadows in the car and the house. So it's just practicing that technique. And that's about it. I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I think the next lens I might do will be the 28mm. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to take the exact same walk or maybe take a different walk, but just show the different types of images that you can get with a 28mm. So until next time, take good care. Thanks for hanging in there with me, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.